A Beacon in the Dark by Noha Ijiachi. Chapter 39. Endeavor's Bad Week. The list of things that did not enrage Todoroki Enji had always been pretty short, and it was getting increasingly shorter as the weeks trickled by after what was going to go down in history as the Camino Ward incident. Enji had been enraged to discover the truth about All Might, and then he was enraged by the fact he rose to the top, the thing he'd always wanted, not by merit, but because All Might turned out to be too weak to keep his place as the number one hero. He was enraged by how feeble Toshinori Yagi was, by the fact that Enji would never be able to claim that spot that he yearned for his entire life with his own hands now. Enraged because of the waste! All these years, all that work to prepare Shoto, only for All Might to become a non-obstacle, only for Shoto to fail his provisional license exam like an idiot, only to see the boy rebel to him, stupidly stubborn, and then see him finally give in, accepting the power Enji had donated it to him, only thanks to that boy. Midoriya Izuku enraged him. Midoriya Izuku was strong, scarily so. Midoriya Izuku had a power that would surely come to easily rival All Might's own in due time. Midoriya Izuku was the one that pushed Shoto to use his full potential and, by doing so, shackled him. Enji wasn't stupid. He knew what he saw in his son's eyes, in the way he spoke about that boy to Fuyumi, how he said the word friend that night in Hosu. Midoriya Izuku was surely going to be the next big obstacle in Shoto's future, and yet the boy was blinded by his own feelings, letting himself fall meekly at Midoriya's feet, adoringly looking up at him as if he's someone to be grateful for, instead of the problem that Midoriya really is. Midoriya Izuku, with his pale, unseeing eyes that meant Enji's own, with a fire that promised pain in them. Midoriya Izuku, who fought against Stain without hesitation, who somehow battled and won alone against Muscular. Midoriya Izuku, who hid a beast inside him, masked behind a smile that looked more like teeth bared threateningly. And no one but Enji seemed to have noticed that. Someone dangerous. Someone that Shoto called friend. Midoriya Izuku enraged him. That's why when the papers came back that morning, Enji came this close to setting them on fire. "Sir, we can't refuse now. Everything has already been decided," his assistant said, tiredly patient. "And we need this." What a tiresome situation. His Majesty All Might decided to step down the throne, leaving a kingdom in shambles behind him, and now Enji was forced to pick up the pieces. And the people insisted from him that he should do so with a smile. That wasn't his style. He was a practical person. No time for lying or dilly-dallying. He had his assistants to take care of PR. He wasn't supposed to pay any mind to this kind of stuff. "Our latest popularity poll shows we've lost even more points," she continued in what she probably thought was a reasonable tone. "We have given our availability for this operation. We've chosen the candidate based on what will help us gain some trust into the public's eyes, and we need it." Enji would need to set something on fire at some point, but it clearly could not be the papers that were glaring back at him with as much force as Enji was using to glare at them. Hissing a curse, he took his pen and signed the papers. The look on Aizawa-sensei's face was more than enough to let them all know what he thought of this latest stunt as he explained the situation to them. "With the amount of accidents and villain attacks we've been having, the school has decided to institute a public relations week to try and gain some trust back," he explains, bored. "Everyone with a provisional license is asked to participate, although it is not an obligation. Technically speaking, this should not be a complete waste of time, as public relations are part of a hero's job. But this is a complete waste of time." Applause.
So, as your teacher, I order you all to make the best out of it and learn as much as you can. Are we clear?
After the dutiful chorus of, "Yes, Sensei," Aizawa-sensei continues.
I already have the list of the offices you've been assigned to.
He sighs, adding in a mutter,
Who thought of this?
Shoto internally breathes a sigh of relief. It still sucks that he doesn't have a provisional license, of course, but at least he won't be forced to participate in this buffoonery. Also, it's a good thing Bakugo failed the exam as well. The words Katsuki Bakugo and public relations definitely did not go well together. He launches a little look at Izuku. He seems excited, of course, seeing how he's sitting at the edge of his chair, back straight and head up, as if he's scared he might miss his own assignment if he doesn't listen intently. Izuku is always capable of making the best out of a situation, so he would be sure to spin gold even from something as silly as a public relations week. Aizawa-sensei is reading the list now, some of his classmates happy about the office they got assigned to, some of them not so much.
But Shoto's blood literally runs cold in his veins when Aizawa-sensei reads the next name. Midoriya, assigned to Endeavor's office branch in Musutafu.
Panic threatens to overcome Shoto as he looks back at Izuku with wide eyes. He sees the lines of Izuku's shoulders tense a bit for a second, but then they relax and Shoto cannot be sure, the position of his desk not allowing him to fully see the expression on Izuku's face, but is he grinning? Izuku can tell that Shoto is nervous even without his quirk. His arms are vaguely tense around him as they cuddle on the couch in their usual position. Izuku comfortably nestled between Shoto's legs, reading with his braille display. Shoto is not reading the school books as he usually does, clearly distracted, preferring to hug Izuku closer to his chest. "Shoto!" Izuku says after a while, feeling him sigh yet again. "I'm going to be fine!"
Shoto doesn't say anything for long seconds. I still worry, he finally murmurs, voice low.
"I know you do, but I will be fine, I promise."
Izuku,
he says after a bit, something charged in his tone.
Why were you grinning when Aizawa-sensei told you the office you were assigned to?
"Oh, was I?" Izuku chuckles, a shit-eating grin opening on his face. "I didn't notice."
Izuku.
Carefully putting his braille display down on the coffee table, Izuku turns. He curls up against Shoto, knees pressing on his belly a bit, hands going to sit on his chest. Shoto's heart beats steadfast under his palm. "Aizawa-sensei told us to make the best out of it, right?" he says, tilting his head on the side with a little smile as his left hand slowly rises up along Shoto's chest. "And I will be doing exactly that."
Izuku,
Shoto says yet again, exasperated. But he trembles just a bit when Izuku's fingers rise along his neck to go graze against his jaw, Izuku's thumb gently sliding on Shoto's soft lips. His usual silent request for a kiss.
Don't try to distract me with kisses now,
Shoto adds against his fingertips, severe. Izuku leans up a bit, sliding his thumb away as he carefully follows the soft sound of Shoto's breathing. He grazes his lips against Shoto's after a couple of false starts, before gently nibbling at his lower lip. Shoto let out a tiny groan, barely audible, his arms tightening around Izuku a bit. "Shoto!" Izuku whispers, tongue darting out just for a second, poking at the point he'd been gently biting on.
I hate you,
Shoto grumbles, a little choked, before leaning down and catching Izuku's lips in a possessive kiss. Knowing he just won, Izuku cheerfully tilts his head, reciprocating with gusto.
Ow, gross.
Kachan's voice grumbles from the corridor leading to the elevator.
Can't you two keep it somewhere more private?
Izuku stops the kiss with a wet noise, more noisy than he really needs to be. This is cuddle hour, Kachan, you know that.
You have a choice of not one, but 2 bedrooms to be cuddling in, you nerd. Why do you two always have to swap us alive on the couches?
Bite me, Bakugo.
Shoto intervenes breathless before putting a hand behind Izuku's head and dragging him forward, catching his lips once more. Izuku laughs into the kiss when Kachan makes a desperate noise and grumbles all the way to the kitchen. When Midoriya, Izuku, enters his office with a bright smile and holding his cane, Angie rolls his eyes. His secretary, Sasaki, welcomes the brat cheerfully, guiding him through the office. She seems immediately smitten with him as he timidly asks her if she could guide him with her arm. He prefers not to use his cane in enclosed spaces, you see. He's always scared he might knock something over with it. She doesn't, aww, but it's clear on her face she's very close to do so. So here he is, this wolf in sheep's wool, going around his office hanging from his secretary's arm like a lost child as she takes her sweet time to make sure he's well accustomed with the place. And of course, here's the boss, she says cheerful, guiding Midoriya in front of him. Midoriya smiles a toothy smile that could light up a room. And Enji knows that is not a smile. It's not. This brat is bearing his canines like a little animal in disguise. It's an honor to be working with you, sir, he says with a little proper bow. I hope to learn much from you. Sasaki pointedly looks at him, and Enji has to bite down his side. I hope you will have a good experience, Enji says, monotone, like he's reading from a script. Welcome on board. Midoriya points his unseeing eyes at him, apparently excited and eager, but Enji sees it, that dark light pooling in the depths of the washed-out green, and wonders how good of an actor this snot-nosed brat really is to be having everyone around him wrapped around his pinky with this little hopeful blind hero act he's got going. Of course, he knew why his PR team had chosen Midoriya between all. The boy had steadily gained popularity ever since the incident at the Kiyoshi Ward Mall, especially after the truth about his condition came out. Midoriya Izuku, barely 16, saves hundreds of lives by risking his own. Midoriya Izuku, UA student, blind since the age of 4, working hard for his dream of becoming a hero. And the public drank it all up. Who doesn't like an underdog story? Poor young boy, so determined and brave, fighting for the future despite his disability. This kind of crap made people feel better about themselves, gave them courage. If a blind boy could follow his dreams, why couldn't they? Yes, it was very obvious the reason as of why his PR team chose Midoriya between all. The public's approval of Endeavor's office has been steadily plummeting ever since he rose to the #1 spot. The people still wanted All Might, but they clearly couldn't find him in Enji. They needed a good stunt, like showing how much they cared by taking little blind Midoriya Izuku under their wing. And the boy definitely confirmed how much of a good actor he was, as Enji watched him interact with his assistants. Everyone fell for him and his apparently adorable exterior, his hopeful energy, his quick mind. In a matter of a single day, Midoriya had pretty much everyone in the office at his beck and call. And Enji had to admit that was vaguely admirable. To be able to spin people around that way made them think they were acting on their own volition when you are actually pulling the strings from the backstage. Yes, a good actor indeed. But Enji knew what was really hidden behind the facade. He had seen the kind of scorching hatred that could burn into those unseeing eyes. Enji had seen the signs on Stain. He had seen in which condition Muscular had been in after his encounter with Midoriya. He was perfectly aware of just what kind of cold brutality this boy was capable of. For how much he hated this stupid publicity stunt, Enji could at least try to take advantage of the occasion and keep a close eye on the brat, assessing him. If he was lucky enough, maybe he'll find something he could use to finally break the silly friendship Shoto seems so hell-bent in building with this boy. Izuku knew he was in for a ride from the start. Endeavor's light constantly gave away an aura of suspicion and distrust toward him. Which wasn't misplaced, per se, considering what Izuku was planning to do, but still. Izuku was fairly sure Endeavor had no idea about how his quirk worked or about the fact he was an empath. Otherwise, he would have probably tried to rein those feelings in a little bit. Or maybe he would just go right ahead and keep his feelings going full force toward Izuku, not giving the slightest care. Izuku wouldn't put it past him. But Izuku wasn't deterred. Not in the slightest. He had a plan, and he would stick by it. The first point of his plan was simple. Get to know Endeavor's assistants. Gain their trust. That had been rather easy, as the workers surrounding Daddy Dearest were actually just normal, decent people. It was clear they had no idea what Endeavor did in the privacy of his own home. Otherwise, Izuku doubted they'd still be working for him. They were kind and accommodating, and it didn't take him much to gain their sympathy. Admittedly, Izuku felt a bit bad about dialing up to 11, the pity-me factor, but he was on a mission, and a week goes by fast. He would find a way to apologize later. His first day at Endeavor's office went by without much to show for it, apparently, but Izuku was laying down the groundwork for his plan, biding his time. Izuku would make sure that by the end of the week, Endeavor would regret every single thing he has ever done to Izuku's boyfriend. Something had been off all morning, and she could not explain what. Nothing noticeable had happened. They went for a round of patrolling that was more for the sake of the general public rather than real work, the brat faithfully following in his hero costume. Angie had been curious about the support gear he wore secured to his ears, but not curious enough to outright ask. Besides, he didn't need to, as his youngest assistant, a bubbly young woman using the hero name Candlelight, asked for him. "It's to help me out with, Midoriya answered with a vague gesture to his pale eyes and a timid smile. Candlelight hummed in understanding, smiling at the boy. "You look really cute with them, Deku," she then said, whipping out her phone. "What do you think about a selfie? Twitter will love it." Midoriya grinned with a happy little nod, letting Candlelight push her cheek against his as she took the picture, both of them flashing a victory sign. Angie managed to rein in the need to roll his eyes. They were doing this whole stunt for good PR. If Candlelight wanted to plaster her face with this boy all over the internet, so be it. They just walked around, Angie trying not to mull over what a waste of time all of this was, while there was real work he could take care of. Nothing really happened, just people gaping at them and sneaking pictures, the more courageous ones approaching them for an autograph. More than a couple of people recognized Midoriya too, who reacted with a facade of timidness, a blush spreading on his cheeks every time. Literally nothing happened all morning. So why couldn't Enji shake this ominous feeling off of himself? They got back to the office for lunch, Candlelight and Midoriya happily chatting. "So how was your first patrol with us? Did you like it?" she asks the boy that smiled brightly. "Very interesting," he chirps back. "Mr. Endeavor is very popular, so seeing him dealing directly with the public has been informative." There's something in his tone of voice that Enji cannot quite pinpoint. An insincerity, a touch of sneer. And yet neither his secretary nor Candlelight bat an eye, smiling at the brat like he's the sweetest thing that has ever walked on planet Earth. "I imagine it mustn't be easy being so popular," Midoriya continued pensive. "Probably very stressful. Must make even one's private life very difficult." The way he suddenly stresses that last word zaps Enji like a thunderbolt as the sense of dread in his stomach got worse. He carefully side-eyes the boy that is doing exactly the same. For how ludicrous that sounds, considering the brat is blind. Then Midoriya smiles sweetly. Something is up with this kid. The day didn't improve much as it went by. When they got their lunch delivered, Enji had at least been looking forward to that, wanting to distract himself from all the crap surrounding him by eating his favorite meal. But when he took the first bite, immediately disgust overcame him. He pales a bit confused, forcing himself to gulp down the food. He frowns down at the takeout box. He couldn't see anything amiss, just looked like the usual order. Perplexed, he tries again and has the same exact reaction.
Were his taste buds drunk? Sir?
Candlelight asks, perplexed.
Is everything okay?
Angie looks over at the brat. He's blinking, confused, tilting his head on the side. Don't be ridiculous. What could he have possibly done? You're being paranoid. It's nothing, he finally says, because Candlelight is worriedly looking at him with her bright orange eyes. The day definitely did not improve from that. Angie kept having these moments. He'd get hit by an idea and get up to do so, only to forget what he wanted to do in the first place midway to wherever he wanted to go, leaving him dizzy and confused. He kept getting distracted during their usual afternoon training session, random thoughts and feelings flashing in his mind, breaking his focus. It was as if his brain just didn't want to obey him that day. And it showed, all his assistants looking at him and exchanging confused glances. The entire thing culminated during the evening as they went out for another patrol. They met a group of teenagers, couldn't be much older than Midoriya himself, that had excitedly approached them asking for an autograph. Angie sighs to himself, preparing for the usual round of loud fanboying as he signs everything as fast as he can, and then,
Wow, boss!
Candlelight whispers to him, eyes as big as plates, a small smile on her lips once whatever had possessed him, making him cheerfully ask the teens if they wanted some pictures too, finally let him go.
You're really working hard for this PR week.
Angie hides his burning cheeks behind his usual mask of fire, speechless. What has gotten into him? Midoriya is smiling too. Mr. Endeavor is kind too. How surprising! What is up with this kid? Gachan, I need to ask you a favor. Katsuki looks up from his homework unamused. Deku is standing near him, hands behind his back, bouncing vaguely on his feet, with a grin on his face. Why don't you ask your boyfriend? Katsuki replies, tilting an eyebrow. Why, you two breaking up or something? Deku scoffs as if he finds the idea that he and Half could possibly ever break up absolutely ludicrous. Don't be silly. I would have asked Shoto if I could, but this favor needs you specifically. Groaning, Katsuki turns, putting his pen down on the table more forcefully than really needed. What do you want? Do you still have that shirt that Aizawa-sensei banned you from wearing on campus? Katsuki frowns, perplexed. Yes. Can I borrow it for a day? Katsuki blinks repeatedly, taken aback. Why would I? Kanshan, this is a life-or-death situation. I need to mess with someone. You can respect that, right? Deku interrupts him, eager, a mischievous light in his pale eyes. You can respect a man's need to mess someone up, right? That's new. I guess. Katsuki begrudgingly admits. Awesome! So, can I borrow it? Fine. Katsuki grumbles, getting up to go to his room with Deku in tow. You can keep it anyway, it's no fun if I can't wear it on campus. Deku's grin is almost face-breaking. This brat is really asking for trouble. Do you think this is funny? Angie hisses and Midoriya flinches, confusion written all over his face. Sir? He asks in a tiny voice. I don't know what you think you are doing. Angie continues fuming. But I know you are doing something, somehow. His secretary chooses that exact moment to walk in, and noticing Midoriya, a little pale, curling into himself as if he's scared, she immediately glares at
Angie like an angry mom.
What's going on? She asks. Oh, Miss Sasaki! The boy stammers, nervously playing with his fingers. When he turns around, she jumps just a tiny bit in surprise. The boy is wearing a black t-shirt with a giant hand giving the middle finger printed on it. Sasaki's lips curl as if she's trying not to laugh. I'm sorry. I must have done something. He continues nervously. I didn't mean to. I'm really sorry. Midoriya, it's okay. she says, gentle, and when she catches Enji's angry, flabbergasted look at her, she makes a silent, jerky gesture with her hands, pointing at her own eyes, mouthing, "Boss, he's blind." "Tell me, is it possible that your clothing could have gotten mixed with someone else's on campus?"
Midoriya blinks, tilting his head on the side.
I guess, yeah. Is something wrong with my clothes?"
He adds, confused.
"That is unacceptable."
Enji snaps, enraged. There's no way this kid didn't know exactly what he was doing.
Midoriya flinches again, his pale eyes filling with tears, lower lip trembling.
Sakasaki's glare strengthens tenfold as she makes an exasperated gesture, pointing at the boy as if saying, "Look, you made him cry now! Good job!"
I'm sorry," he sobs again, trying to wipe away the tears with his wrist. Sasaki approaches him, putting a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's okay, Midoriya. It's not your fault. Let's go get you changed, okay?" she says, gentle, and the boy nods with a little sad pout, letting himself get guided away. And later that day, Enji could only assume the story about what has happened must have gotten around, because his entire office spent the rest of the day suddenly glaring at him. This week seemed to trickle by at a snail pace. Midoriya was messing with him. Enji knew it. He knew it, but had no proof. The boy's act was squeaky clean. Not a single gesture betrayed his guilt. In the eyes of everyone, he was just a nice, hard-working kid with a heart of gold. But Enji knew. There was no other explanation as to why all these strange things had started happening to him ever since the start of the week. Midoriya had to be responsible, somehow. Things had gotten increasingly worse. On top of everything else, Enji kept finding himself victim to these sudden weird moods that threw him for a loop. Enji had always had one mood. Cold, controlled anger. It's what had always driven him forward, made him capable of keeping control over everything. What made him the number 2, now number 1, hero. But these flashes of moodiness, they came in at the worst times, making him laugh at inopportune moments, making him dizzy and confused, and everyone had noticed. His assistants giving him a wide berth, eyeing him worriedly as if they were afraid he might lose his mind at any second. And not only that, the brat would sometimes mutter little taunts that immediately flared Enji's temper, and every single time that happened, someone had turned a corner, catching him in the act of scolding the boy or glaring at him, making the person that caught them shake their head at Enji with a little judging frown. Every single time. I wonder if Mr. Endeavor has any idea what it means to love someone, the brat muttered after they've met a pretty eager fan that had declared her undying love for Enji just as they were getting back to the office. And right on cue, Sasaki walked in on them in the hall after Midoriya said that, squinting at Enji menacingly. Enji kept his mouth shut. Going out for their PR operation, patrols, was becoming a nightmare. Enji kept unintentionally making a fool out of himself by acting completely out of character in short bursts, with this small green little shit following him, the image of pure innocence as he trails after Enji with a smile. Izuku Midoriya is messing with him big time, and Enji had no way of proving that, and it was driving him insane. Honestly, it was as if destiny itself was working in Izuku's favor. The last evening patrol of the last PR weekday came, and Izuku definitely felt relieved. He'd been straining his quirk quite a lot in order to push forward his messing with Endeavor at every possible occasion plan, and it was starting to really wear him down. But he also felt a bit sad, as barring Endeavor, everyone else in the office had been really kind to him, and Izuku would surely miss them. Candlelight, especially, felt really bummed, her light giving away a gentle feel of sadness at the thought Izuku won't be part of the team anymore after that last patrol. She was such a nice girl. Izuku had been speaking with her quite a lot whenever Endeavor wasn't around, subtly hinting she should probably find a better office to be employed in. She deserved to find someone that would really appreciate her hard work. And his words seemed to have an effect, as in the past 2 days, Candlelight had felt more and more doubtful about Endeavor. Honestly, making her question the man had only been a secondary effect of Izuku's plan, but he was definitely glad for it. Maybe, if he was lucky, Endeavor's other assistants would follow her example and leave for something better than whatever Endeavor had to offer. They walk in a park near the office, surrounded by people that excitedly point them out. It seems as if the patrol will be uneventful and mostly focus on making a good impression on the general public, as they did the whole week, and then Izuku flinches when a high-pitched shriek fills the air, deafening all of them for a few instants. When the sound stops, Izuku's ears are still ringing. "Stand back," Endeavor says, commanding. "Make sure the civilians are secured. I'll take care of this." And he was off, directed toward the 2 lights that were giving away waves of aggression. Izuku obeys, leaving him be, because for how funny it had been to mess around with Endeavor's mood all week, he's not quite so petty as to put civilian lives in danger for the sake of keeping doing so. He and Candlelight get to work efficient, making sure everyone is moved away from the site of the battle as Endeavor took care of the 2 villains. "Did you recognize them?" Izuku asks with a loud voice over the chaos of the battle once they are done, as he scans the surroundings to make sure no one is nearby anymore. "One of them is a guy that calls himself Shockwave," Candlelight yells back. "Small-time villain, mostly responsible for some robberies. That shriek we heard was him. The other I never seen before." She makes a little choke sound, surprise spiking in her light. "He just disappeared." An invisibility quirk, Izuku thinks to himself. He can still feel the guy's light just fine, of course. Endeavor is busy with Shockwave, the high-pitched shrieks getting mixed in the rumble and cracking of Endeavor's fire. He seems focused, apparently ignoring the other villain. "Boss!" Candlelight tries to yell, worried. And Izuku realizes he must have not noticed the invisible man that's creeping right behind him. Izuku's feet move on their own, the energy of One for All sparking through his veins as he makes a dash for the villain. The kick connects with the villain's face. The metal of mace supports on his feet, heavy as a sledgehammer against the unfortunate soul, and Izuku hears the cracking of bones breaking as the man makes a choked sound of pain, ungracefully flying back and away from Endeavor. His light shifts, suggesting the effect of his quirk had been interrupted, making him visible to working eyes again. "Are you okay?" Izuku instinctively asks, and then feels the explosion of angry annoyance in Endeavor's light. Yikes. That definitely feels familiar. Thank God Kachan seems to be on the way of becoming someone that doesn't get that mad about people thinking he needs help anymore. The mere idea Kachan risked to become the kind of adult Endeavor is sends a shudder run down Izuku's spine. Irritated, Endeavor makes a quick work of Shockwave, ending the battle for good. The invisible villain is lying down unconscious after taking a one-for-all powered kick to the face, and Endeavor seems to observe to him, calculating before turning toward Izuku. Izuku has already switched One for All off, but he feels Endeavor's eyes bore into him like 2 burning coals. "I did not tell you to intervene," Endeavor snaps in a low voice. "A simple thank you would suffice," Izuku answers back, unable to stop his mouth from doing so. He feels Endeavor's rage hiss like an angry bat in his light, but he doesn't have the time to say anything as Candlelight is approaching them. "Deku, are you okay?" she asks, worried. "You scared me." "I'm fine, sorry. I couldn't just stand there doing nothing, you know." "That was pretty cool, though," she says, a smile in her voice. "Nice cake." Izuku grins as Endeavor behind him tries to stifle his annoyance. Police officers arrived on the scene in the meantime, Endeavor leaving the villains to them as he turns around toward the parked exit. "Back to the office, you two," he says monotone. "We are done here." Izuku follows dutifully, but just as they get out the park gates, they are stopped by a little group of curious and journalists. "Endeavor, a minute, please." Izuku and Candlelight stand back as the man takes care of the press, curtly answering the questions, and then, "Deku, how was it working with the #1 hero?" Deku blinks, surprised by the fact he's being addressed directly when said number one hero is standing right there. Endeavor's light gives out a quiet note of surprise too, before being stifled by his usual rage. Izuku plasters the most brilliant smile he has on his face, mentally praising the deities for giving him one more chance to annoy Mr. Not of the Year. It was great! Such an honor! I've learned much from Mr. Endeavor. I'm a little sad the week has already ended, but I'm sure I will have many more chances in the future to meet him. And Izuku feels the sneer in Endeavor's light as soon as the words are out of his mouth. It's clear that he's thinking, yeah, right, this is not happening ever again.
Oh, does this mean you are aiming to work in Endeavor's office once you graduate?
Well, that's not quite what I meant. Izuku shrugs, still smiling brilliantly. But me and Shoto, Mr. Endeavor's son, are really good friends. Very close. You could say we are best friends, actually, and Shoto has confided in me a lot. It'd only be natural for me to meet Mr. Endeavor again in the future thanks to that. Would it not? The annoyance in Endeavor's light only increases tenfold at that, mixed in with a quiet tenseness at Izuku's implications regarding how much Shoto might have told him of the way Endeavor acted toward his own son. The journalists immediately start to try and fish for some juicy details about the elusive private life Endeavor leads with his family, and Endeavor rushes to put a stop to that, firmly declaring that they had work to attend to, and pushing both Izuku and Candlelight away from the crowd, falling into a stony, tense silence. Angie is doing his best not to explode! There was something in the boy's voice as he declared this presumed closeness with Shoto. How much does he really know? What could have Shoto told him? It wasn't like him to be so open with strangers. But this boy, he clearly was no stranger to Shoto.
It's so nice that you two are friends,
Candlelight comments, tearful, gently bumping into the boy.
Whenever I've happened to meet Todoroki, he always seemed very private. I'm glad to know he has a friend as nice as you. He's very lucky.
Midoriya's face seems to change as they enter the office. A small, gentle smile pulls at his lips, the light in his eyes softening. I'm the lucky one, having him by my side, he says, voice low and full of affection. Angie steps away, frowning, as the two linger by the entrance. Just how deep their relationship is. School hasn't started so long ago. Candlelight blinks, tilting her head on his side. A small, mischievous grin opens on her lips. Deku! What? Midoriya replies, shaking his head as if he suddenly woke up from a dream.
Is there more to your friendship with him?
She asks, still grinning, gently elbowing him. Have you got a crush? You can tell me, she adds conspiratorial. Angie was just about to exit the room when he notices the boy blush violently out the corner of his eye. He stops by the door, turning around minutely. I was kind of joking, Candlelight comments, clearly surprised and apologetic. I didn't mean to tease you. I'm sorry. No, it's okay, Midoriya replies, stilted. Candlelight's bright orange eyes seem almost piercing as she stares at the boy.
I have the distinct feeling there's more to this than you are letting on,
she says, pensive.
Well, none of my business, I guess, is it?
She adds, shaking her head.
You were not wrong, though,
Midoriya replies, and then slaps his hand against his mouth as if he accidentally let those words out. Candlelight is smiling now, a fond light in her eyes. Are you two together? That's adorable, she says, a hand on her chest before Midoriya glances in Angie's direction, and she goes still. Time seems to freeze. Both Midoriya and Candlelight turn toward Angie, expressions suggesting they pretty much forgot he was there. Well, that explains what went wrong with Shoto. Failing the provisional exam, he was probably too distracted thinking about his shiny new little boyfriend to focus on what was really important. No, Midoriya must be lying. There's no way Shoto really could be. Midoriya, my office. No. Angie snaps because if he has to think for even a single instant about how adorable the idea of Shoto getting involved with this little animal is supposed to be, they might just puke. Candlelight hesitates, putting a hand on the brad's shoulder, but he turns to her with a little determined frown and nods once. She carefully takes her hand away, watching them as they silently make their way to Angie's office. What was that about? Angie hisses as soon as the door is closed, quiet rage seeping through his voice. Midoriya stays silent for long seconds, a frown settling on his features and a dark light pooling in his eyes. I'm not quite sure what you are referring to, he replies flat. Don't play dumb now. What you've implied out there was more than enough. Am I supposed to really believe that you've gotten involved with my son? He presses, furious. Do you think lying about that just to get to me is funny? The dark light pulled Midoriya unseeing eyes seems to get even deeper now, his voice lowering. I wasn't lying about what I feel, he says, barely controlled. I love Shoto. Angie growls, but Midoriya continues before he can say anything else. I love him. That's all that there's to it. You are free to believe I'm lying, if it brings you comfort, but that won't change the truth. I want you out of my office. Angie snaps, flames coming out of his tight fist against his will. Right now, and I don't want to see your face ever again, you ungrateful, rude little... I don't want to ever see you again either, Midoriya growls back before letting out a mirthless chuckle. Lucky me that I can't actually see your ugly mug. But let me make something clear. Endeavor? He takes a step forward. This child that's just barely over half Angie's height, squaring up to him, his pale eyes brightening, and sparks of green lightning runs all along his body, a suffocating pressure immediately filling the air around them. If you dare turn a single hair on Shoto's head again, I will come for you, and it won't be pretty, Midoriya slowly says, baring his teeth. If you dare utter a single word to him that isn't the sentence, I'm sorry for what I've done to you, what you've been through this week would be a walk in the park compared with what I will do to you. And do not deceive yourself in thinking you might get away with abusing him ever again, because I will. No. Are we clear? Get out. Angie hisses, the words coming out a little choked. Midoriya stares angrily up at him for long seconds, the pressure he's exerting increasing tenfold as if he's making a point, before slowly releasing it like he's powering down on his own perfectly controlled volition. With pleasure, he says in a low growl, turning on his heels, walking out of Angie's office with an angry stride. Angie falls on his chair, finally able to breathe again, beads of cold sweat collecting on his forehead. Shoto looks down at his ringing phone, indecisive. Izuku had been busy. With what? He would not tell. He would usually get back to the dormitories pretty late, tired, and Shoto didn't have it in him to drill him for answers. Not when he could cuddle and kiss him instead for what little time they had before going to bed. Not when he could work out the little tense knots in Izuku's back with careful, gentle massages. Shoto would never forgive himself if he hurt Izuku by accidentally working his abused, scarred back too strongly. The PR week was to end today. Finally! Not that the week ending meant much for the amount of time he'll be able to spend with Izuku, seeing as they both still had to frequent their extra classes, but at least Shoto would be able to get rid of that constant sting of worry that had taken permanent place in his heart, knowing that Izuku was working with his father. Then the call came in, and Shoto cannot deny that he is a little worried. Izuku had clearly been up to something Shoto was not quite sure he wanted to know about. The fact he was calling him when he was to be back to the dormitories in less than half an hour was concerning. Taking a deep breath, Shoto picks up the call. Izuku. His heart falls to his feet and his head feels light with worry yet anger when he hears Izuku try and fail to stifle a sob. Hey, he hiccups, sniffing. Shoto, I messed up. Shoto is going to kill his father. What did he do? He hisses angrily, not quite a question. He will strangle him. He will. He made Izuku cry. This is unacceptable. No, I messed up. Izuku replies, voice low. I said something I shouldn't have said without your permission. I'm sorry. And Shoto, that is far too familiar with the feeling of losing control over his mouth whenever his father is involved, slowly sighs. Izuku, it's okay. He's good at fishing words out of people. I'm sure he must have been insufferable. It's not quite that, Izuku whispers. I kind of went way over my head, and, I'd rather talk to you about this in person, but I still wanted to give you a heads up, in case you hear something strange. Something strange, Shoto repeats back carefully. Just what happened? I'll be there soon, I'll be there soon. Love you, bye. And he closes the call. Shoto looks down at the phone in his hand with wide eyes, gaping. Did Izuku just say, love you? Don't, he murmurs to himself, pinching the bridge of his nose. It probably just slipped out. It means nothing, just don't. With a sigh, he pockets the phone, walking downstairs to go wait in the communal area. Izuku's heart is beating in his throat as he hesitates in front of the dorm doors. He's so tired and rattled, and so many conflicting emotions are storming inside him. And most of all, he's terrified of having let Shoto down. He had all the intentions to suddenly drop the bomb on Endeavor at the end of the week, letting him know that Shoto was not to be touched ever again. It was part of his plan from the very beginning. Code word being subtly. What Izuku had done had been about as subtle as taking a sledgehammer to a glass shop. He was terrified at the idea Endeavor might retaliate through Shoto. Thankfully, Shoto was safe and sound at the dormitories, and he would come stay with him and Mom at the next break, and all the breaks that were to come if Izuku could help it. And while Izuku's initial intention hadn't exactly been to outright threaten the number one hero, what he said to him had been 100% true. If Endeavor tried to do anything to Shoto ever again, Izuku would go for him, no questions asked. Still, Izuku shouldn't have let himself lose his temper. But he did, enraged by Endeavor's sneer at the idea that Izuku could possibly care for his son. The man was a fool, an absolute buffoon, and had absolutely no idea of what was going on in Shoto's life. That's not how a parent should act. Angry tears rose back to his eyes, traitorous. He was so mad, and there was this sting of pain in his chest at the mere thought of what kind of home Shoto had been forced to grow in, just because he was unlucky enough to have a father like that. A man that did not deserve to be called father. Izuku took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. Shoto was probably going to worry himself sick if he entered already crying. He slowly cracked the door open, propping his cane against the wall as he took his shoes off. He didn't hear any sound at all. His classmates, probably already all either in bed or having to come back from their own last day of PR week. Izuku. He jumps, tense, and then hears the muffled sound of steps, Shoto's gentle hand finding his. Hey, Izuku forces himself to say with a strained, lopsided smile. Shoto doesn't reply, interlacing their fingers and gently walking him toward the couches, guiding him to sit down. Then he pushes something warm in his hands, and Izuku smells the familiar aroma of his favorite tea. Tears sang in his eyes again. Shoto was always so nice and thoughtful, and the way Izuku paid him back today had been by threatening his father that was surely going to find a way to petulantly get back to Izuku, probably through Shoto himself. Good job, stupid. So, want to tell me what happened? Shoto asks, his voice low and kind. Izuku gulps around a knot in his throat, forcing himself to take a sip of tea and sigh deeply. Shoto, I'm sorry, I'm in a mess. Izuku. Shoto stops him, cold fingers on his arm. Just tell me what happened, okay? Pursing his lips, Izuku takes a moment to think before explaining what he's been up to the entire week in a low voice. Shoto listens in silent patience, never moving his hand away from Izuku's arm, even when Izuku shamefully admitted of having completely lost his cool. I don't know, I was so angry I snapped. Izuku murmurs once he's done relaying the entire experience, nervously rolling his now empty cup of tea between his hands. I shouldn't have been so blunt with him. I don't know, I wanted to make things clear, but... Shoto sighs, gently caressing Izuku's arm. I understand, he murmurs. I know how it is with him. He's just naturally good at pushing people's buttons. I know how it feels losing control over your own mouth. I'm really sorry, Izuku murmured, unable to stop the tears rolling down his cheeks. I made a total mess. I should have kept my mouth shut. I shouldn't have lost it like that. It's a delicate situation, and I just waltzed in with absolutely no tact. I'm sorry, Shoto. A sniff as he angrily wiped the tears away with the back of his hand. I really am. I don't know how I can possibly remedy to this. I'm not going to say everything is okay, Shoto replies slowly. You shouldn't have said those things, but I honestly don't care. Izuku blinks, surprised. You don't? I don't. Shoto continues firm. I've said far worse things to him multiple times. And what can he do? I'm here, and he's out there. He has no power over me anymore, Izuku. He will never take me out of UA because he actually wants me to become a hero. And now I have you and all our friends. I have Yagi and Aizawa-sensei. I have my mother back. He adds, voice lowering. I'm not alone and I'm not defenseless. I'm not scared of him. Oh, Izuku exhales, shoulders relaxing. He hadn't realized how tense he was. I'm glad to hear that. I'll do everything I can to keep you safe. I know you will. Shoto murmurs, affectionate, finger squeezing Izuku's forearm. It's okay, Izuku. You told my jerk of a father to stop being a jerk. It was about time someone told him that. He adds with a little chuckle. I still shouldn't have, not without speaking with you first, Izuku grumbles, frowning. I'm sorry. I know you are. You are forgiven if that's what you want to hear. Ugh! Izuku replies, frown deepening. You are far too quick to forgive me things, Shoto. You've got to get mad at me every now and then. I don't want to get mad at you, Shoto says, perplexed. Why would I? Because I need to learn my lessons, Izuku replies, incredulous. If you constantly give me a pass for every stupid thing I do, I'm just going to get used to it. Shoto interrupts him with a short, amused laugh. Don't be silly. It's clear that you are learning your lessons plenty. He adds, his voice coming closer. He leans in, hands rising along Izuku's shoulders as Izuku rests both palms on his chest. He takes Izuku's face in both his hands and tilts it up a bit. Ah, no! Don't kiss me now! I'm all snotty and gross! Izuku tries to protest, squeezing his eyes shut and turning his face away, making Shoto laugh again. I am a bit too, so can we share a snotty kiss? He says, laughing once more at Izuku's Ew! It's really not that bad, Izuku. Alright, jeez, knock yourself out! Izuku mutters, his hand sliding down from Shoto's chest and going to rest on his knees, as Shoto tilts his head and presses his lips against Izuku's in a gentle, slow kiss. Izuku smiles into it. This week kinda sucked, no matter how fun his petty revenge against Endeavor had been. And he was definitely stressed out after having strained his quirks so much, and this last evening was an absolute disaster. But this makes it all worth it. I can't believe you've been messing with my father the whole week, and didn't tell me, Shoto mutters against his lips, catching his breath. I could have given you pointers. Izuku let out an ungraceful laugh through his nose. Let me be the petty one in this couple. No reason for you to also go down this rabbit hole. May I remind you that you are talking with a person that refused to use half of their quirk out of sheer pettiness. I'm afraid I've been down this rabbit hole for longer than you, Izuku. Izuku starts again, feeling Shoto's smile against his own lips. His Sunday night was plagued by doubts. He walked around distractedly, not paying as much attention as he usually did during his patrolling. He felt as if the world was shifting under his feet before he could even realize. Everything suddenly changed so fast. The last time he spoke with Shoto, he seemed different. There was still that resentment in his eyes that NG was used to, but there was also something more. Something different. A calmness he'd never shown before, and his words, I've been saved by a hero. He wondered a lot about those words, the meaning behind them that NG could not quite grasp. He wondered about a lot of things, about what All Might said to him when he played interference, about his own position as the current #1 hero that only seemed to be doing harm rather than good. And now he wondered about Midoriya, too. NG's night went by, perturbed by many thoughts, and when he arrives back in his office on Monday morning, he's surprised to find on his desk a resignation letter by candlelight. He's looking at it confused. Why would she leave so suddenly, and to think she seemed so eager to work with him when she got hired? When there's a knock on the door, another rather new hire pokes his head inside, looks at the letter in his hand, and hisses, She beat me to it. That's pretty much the rest of how NG's day goes.